Hey there, Resume Lezlie here with my co-host Nia2. How you doing, Nia2?
I'm good. What's up, everybody? Good to be back. It's only been a month every time, but it just feels longer somehow. I don't know why, but I'm really happy to be here today.
Yeah, awesome. Me too. Thank you to everybody for joining us on this special Thursday edition of Behind Hiring. Thanks for sticking with us through some scheduling changes this week. I'm glad we were able to make everything work.
For sure, for
All
sure.
right. Just a couple of housekeeping things as we get into our live today. I mentioned it on Tuesday in my live. I want to mention it again today. If you're seeing closed captions on the live, you should have the ability down at the bottom to select your options or settings and turn those off if you don't want to see those. As of right now, LinkedIn won't let me turn them off until the live is already done, and then I can go back and turn them off. So if you're seeing those captions live and you want to turn them off, you should be able to do that right there from your screen. Other than that, if you like this video, if you're excited to see us today, go ahead and give it a like, leave us a comment, and let us know where you're watching from. Nia2, you're at home, right?
Yes, I am. Where else would I be in the pandemic still? So,
Yes, absolutely. So I am back in West Yellowstone, Montana. Andy is in the comments with us. So if you see him commenting, he is there to help us. He will try to bring out some questions if you guys have questions and just help us catch attention on those. We have Andrea from Toronto. Good to see you. Thank you so much. We have Steve from Carrollton, Texas. That's nearby where I lived for a very long time in Dallas. Matthew, good to see you. Hello, everyone. Very excited to see this informative conversation between Lezlie Nia2 and Chelsea J. We are very, very excited to have Chelsea with us today. Chelsea is fantastic. Nia2 and I both have had great interactions and conversations with her so far. She is a career coach and employee advocate who unapologetically helps job hoppers land roles they don't want to leave. She is also the host of Chelsea's Career Corner podcast. And without any further ado, I'll go ahead and bring up Chelsea. Hey, Chelsea, how are you?
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited for our conversation today.
yeah, thanks
Good.
so much for joining us. We appreciate you opting in and saying that you'll give us a shot.
Oh, how can I say no? I watch you guys all the time. I love what you both are doing. So, of course, I had to say yes.
Awesome.
That is awesome. Chelsea, why don't you tell our audience a little bit more about yourself?
Yes. So, like you said, I'm a career coach, resume writer, and employee advocate. I opened Season and Growing officially back in 2017, but I spent the last 10 years mentoring employees, coaching employees on how to kind of break out of their shells and break out of those stereotypes and really take their career where they want to go. And I found myself doing that in every position that I was in. So I was like, you know what? I need to reach more people. So that's how Season and Growing was born.
That is awesome. Fantastic. We've got some more people in here. I want to just acknowledge. Anna wants to know if this recording is going to be available to watch later. Yes, absolutely, it will be. So LinkedIn keeps these lives up at least for a month or more. And also, I always take the behind hiring segments and put them on my YouTube channel. So if Andy is available to put that link in there for the YouTube channel, that'd be great. If not, I will come back and put it in later. We've got Joylene joining us today. Joylene is often in our lives. It's fantastic to see you. Thank you so much.
What up, Joylene?
Manal says, hey, Chelsea, so nice to meet you. We've got folks excited about you being here.
Nice to
Chelsea,
meet you.
that's awesome. We've got somebody here from Jersey City, Princeton. Oh, and we've got the YouTube channel link up in the comments. Thank you, Andy. Much appreciated.
Awesome. Just a quick note to make Andy's life a little bit easier and ours in the comments. If you have a question, please write the word question in caps at the beginning and then add your question. It's going to make it far easier for us to get to you during the broadcast.
Yes, I love that. So smart. I never think of that. I'm so glad you do.
Oh, borrowing from a Sonal Ball, so giving credit where credit's due. That's where I learned that little tip from.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, all right. I think we can jump into our first question here. So, Chelsea, you really have a focus on advocating for employees and really advocating for job hoppers. Why is it so important for you to advocate for job hoppers and kind of the concept of job hopping in general?
Wow, there are so many reasons, and I can go on and on for days, so I'll try to keep it short. But first of all, traditionally, when it has come to job hopping, there's always been this one-sided narrative. And even when I was in the workforce and just growing up, I always heard, you don't want to be a job hopper. Don't job hop. You'll never be able to find the good positions that you want. It's going to taint your career. And my question for everything in life is always, why? Like, tell me where you got that from, and then we can have a conversation and build on that. But no one can ever answer it. They just go back to, well, that's what hiring managers say. Don't be a job hopper. And my thing is, okay, let's talk about job hopping and let's talk about the reason behind job hopping. It's not like people just dive into a career and they're like, I'm going to be a job hopper for the next 20 years. That's not typically how it works. What happens is you either get in a toxic work environment, or you run into the wrong boss, or you run into a company whose mission and values don't align directly with yours, or you discover, hey, this is not really what I want to do. And the thing is, we're individuals that continuously grow. We grow every day, every year. And it's okay to embrace that growth. And it's okay to say, you know what, this situation is not serving me. This isn't good for my mental or emotional health. It's okay to move on. And I really want people to be comfortable with taking their career in their own hands and not worrying about a stereotype, but instead really putting their needs first. Because at the end of the day, you have to clock in every single day. You're the one who has to go and do the work. So I want you to enjoy doing what you do, regardless of what anyone says.
I love that. I think that's fantastic. I love that idea of it's okay to speak up for yourself. It's okay to say, you know, hey, this is not working for me anymore, or this isn't the right environment for me. I need to do something to change it.
Absolutely. And if I can add one more thing too, when I would go into organizations, whether I was in a leadership role or, frontline staff, I would often run into people who were just burnt out. And when you're not happy, like that oozes off of you. And I mean, everybody can feel it in the room. Your work quality isn't as great. You know what I mean? Like your energy and your mood is, just connecting to other people. And everybody is wondering, okay, what's wrong with this person? Why do they act like that? Well, they stayed way too long, unfortunately. And not only are you doing that harm to yourself, you're doing it to other people. And it's amazing how one person in a room can shift the energy of everyone else. And that's why you hear people all the time talk about, oh, the whole environment's toxic. Well, it may have started with one or two people and it just had a trickle down effect. So there's a lot at stake. And that's why I say leave if you need to leave.
No, that's a really helpful reminder. A sports analogy came to mind for me just now, thinking about the NBA and players like LeBron James taking control of their career and people being big mad when he first did that. We can talk about the decision. That's a whole other conversation. But the fact that he wanted to take control of his career destiny and move to a place where he thought that he could do better, it's become more of the norm nowadays. But there's a time where it was frowned upon for any athlete in any sport to decide, hey, I want to go here because we felt ownership, because they get paid millions of dollars, they got to stay. But translate that down to the level where, millions of dollars are not at stake. you have the agency and ability to move on and control your career path to make sure that you're in the best environment for yourself and not be in a place where you stagnate or are dissatisfied or, you know, God forbid, you're depressed and really incredibly unhappy because you overstayed and because you're not self-advocating and self-actualizing towards a place that's better for you to be ultimately.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Yeah. And Matthew actually had a good comment that kind of goes along with that. He says, replace the term job hopper with self-aware career strategist. And I think that's kind of what you were touching on there, Nia, too. Absolutely.
Yeah, I like that. Matthew, please write about that. I like that too.
Yeah, he always has great gems that he drops. Thank you, Matthew.
Yeah. We've got some great comments here already for you, Chelsea. Katrina says, always ask why. I love that.
Yes.
We've got someone, it doesn't have a name on it, but says, yes, toxic work environments will definitely have people job hopping. Also, I agree, Chelsea, you have to put your mental health first, and it's okay to advocate for yourself. That's so awesome. We've got a quick question that I think will help sort of center our conversation here. How do you define job hopping? What's the frequency of switching jobs that you would consider hopping? And also, you say you help job hoppers, but do you also help people who haven't actually left those toxic settings quickly enough to be considered a hopper?
Yes. Okay. So those are really great questions. And I think you both commented on this post that I recently did a few weeks ago when I asked everybody, hey, what is your definition of job hopping? Because through talking about it and talking to a lot of different people, I've discovered that everyone has a different definition for job hopping. So some people believe, hey, it's 1 to 2 years staying somewhere. You'll hear some people say 3 to 4, but then you'll also hear people turn around and say, well, if you hop every 10 years, that's job hopping. So I really believe, I know, right? And we're looking like, well, you stayed, like you put your time in. So I truly believe that it depends on who you're talking to. Number one, it depends on that hiring manager or recruiter. But more than anything, yes, job hopping is a stereotype, but I want you to throw that stereotype out of your mind and focus on your future more than anything. And focus on your goals and what you need and what you want out of your career, and be intentional about the moves that you make. And your job, especially, as a job seeker, is to instill trust and confidence in the hiring process, so that when people come to you and say, oh, you job hop, no, this is the reason why I did it. These are the skills that I gained there, and this is what I can take moving forward. So I know that was a long answer to that question, but with everything in the world of careers, it depends. Now, let's see, what was the second question? Do I work with people who haven't left those toxic settings? Yes. I work with a lot of clients like that, unfortunately. And by the time they get to me, they're burnt out because they stayed too long. So I spend a lot of time with my clients kind of working on shifting their mindset and really discovering what it is they need out of an employer and the next thing that they do. Because the more that I talk to people, the more I find that throughout their career, they've repeated certain patterns over and over that has unfortunately, led them to those situations where they're in toxic environment after toxic environment. But yes, I work with a lot of clients like that. It takes work, but we get through it.
That is awesome. I got one more comment here because I think it will add some excellent perspective. Sarah says, as an HR manager who oversees thousands of resumes a day, I admire candidates who have hopped around. It typically makes for a strong candidate interview as they have multiple experiences to touch on and a strong understanding of different working environments. Is that what you find, Chelsea?
I absolutely love that. And one thing that I say all the time is we need more hiring managers like Sarah. We need that open mind. We need hiring managers and recruiters who are able to see the positives of different experiences and not being so closed-minded to what, people did 20 or 30 years ago. So I love that. That's a breath of fresh air. And I do run into other hiring managers like that too.
Awesome. Awesome. We have some really great engagement today. Thank you guys so much. Keep commenting, keep putting your questions in there. For now, we'll go ahead and move into our second question. Chelsea, what is your biggest piece of advice to help job hoppers and other job seekers overcome a non-traditional background?
I think you need to know where you're going and what you ultimately want. That's the thing, because once you know what it is you want, once you have a vision for your career and your future, then you can easily explain your moves to other people. Because what I notice is when people get into, the interview room and people ask them about their history, they try to shy away from it and they're like, oh, well, I moved around because of this, or they won't even address it. But the key is confidence and understanding what you got from each position prior to the one you're applying for now. And you need to be able to show those positives. Talk about the skills that you gained, talk about the lessons that you learned, and talk about those and how they will shape your ultimate performance as to where you're going next and how it can help the employer. So you're basically selling it as a benefit.
Yes, I love that. Niatu and I often talk in Behind Hiring about controlling your narrative. And that is something that I think we both hold really dear. Niatu, do you want to hop in and talk about that a little bit? Or
Yeah, sure. I think that the underlying message that Chelsea is sharing is that it's really important for you to embrace what you've been through as far as your story, your journey, because number one, it's yours, it's no one else's. And so we have to be able to give ourselves permission to own our journey. Remember that there were reasons that you took that were valid at the time for you to make those moves. You know, whether things happened to you or life happened to you, or you said, no, I'm going to go do this. It's part of your story. And so I said this a few recordings ago, but it's not in spite of your journey, but because of your journey, you're able to do certain things. And so it's really about getting back to understanding, as Chelsea's saying, the benefits of your experiences. What skills, experiences, perspectives can you bring to the table that are going to benefit your future employer, that allow you to add a lot of tremendous value versus someone who might have been in a straight line career path. Not to knock that, but you bring something different to the table that may help you to stand out. And so in this day and age, standing out is what helps you to get ahead. And so why not embrace the parts of your story that will help you to stand out in order for you to move ahead?
yes, I love that. Beautifully said. Absolutely. We've got one quick comment from Matthew. He is a recruiter and he says, as a recruiter, it's none of my business why someone left after a year or 6 months or 6 weeks. What I want to know, what he wants to know is how does your skill set align with what their organization needs? That is what matters most. I love it.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Matthew. And like I said, you just need more recruiters like that. And I think you need to be mindful as a job seeker that you're going to run into both. And just because, one recruiter has a different mindset or they have their own bias, it's okay because you'll run into someone like Matthew or Sarah who are on your team. So don't let one person's, negative or negativity stop your show.
Yeah, this is a great segue actually for the next question, because we've had a breath of fresh air from Matthew and Sarah in seeing, recruiters who do embrace people with a more eclectic background. But let's get inside the mindset of employers and hiring managers who have maybe a more traditional view of the quote unquote job hopper. So can you help our audience understand what might be some of the most common fears or apprehensions that employers would have when interviewing a candidate who would fall into the quote unquote job hopper category?
Yeah, so there's actually 2 points that I want to make here, and I want to make this one first before I forget. If you are running into hiring managers who have a different mindset and they're really challenging you on it to the point where you feel uncomfortable, that might be a red flag for you. Because once you get into the organization, they might have some of those same thoughts and biases about other things as well. So pay attention to that because you really want to work for forward thinking, inclusive, and people who welcome you. That's the type of environment you really want to work for. But as far as, the other question, that you asked, I get it. Like hiring managers and companies have a bottom line, right? And their bottom line is to make money. And how do you make money? Through your employees. And you make and keep money through employees who stay. So employers do want those employees who they can, at least they think, who are going to stay for a long time, because turnover in hiring and recruiting, that costs money and it affects their bottom line. So that's why I said you really have to go in understanding your story, like you said, embracing it, knowing what you want for the future, and knowing that this company is a good fit for you, because you'll have to let them know, oh, hey, I have all this experience, but I do plan on committing to staying here for, you know, a long time to build my career. And that's the hope, because if you've done your research, you know that the environment is better, you know you're going to get paid better and have a lot of better benefits. So hopefully you would stay, which would ultimately help their bottom line and also help you as a professional too. So you have to understand they have a bottom line, and don't be afraid to address it.
Right. And so you started answering my follow-up a little bit, but can you say a bit more in terms of how can a candidate either proactively address those fears of appearing to be someone who's a risk if they're hired, of leaving early? And secondly, you know, can also what signals can you throw out intentionally in an interview to really allay those fears on the employer side?
Yes. So if you want to address it initially, do so in a cover letter. I've done that with a lot of my clients, and that works. Let them know I do have a background, but my goal is to work with your company and build a long-term solid career and continue to move up. Let them know what your intentions are. You can also say that in an interview. When the first question they usually ask is, tell me a little bit about yourself. Okay, briefly talk about your background and say, and here's my goal, and here's how this ties into your company. And my goal is to build a long-term, you know, mutually beneficial career with your organization. It's kind of like dating, right? You can say, I am ready to settle down, and I believe your company is the place that I can do that. Like I've literally said that in my career before, you know, and that was after doing extensive research and knowing this is the organization for me, and this is why. And that also flatters them as well. So yes, there are two ways that you can address that up front. You can even do it, you know, sprinkle it in throughout your resume too. But your cover letter and the interview are the place to really do that and address it head on. And don't be afraid to answer those questions. If they ask you, you need to have a response prepared. Because what I do notice a lot of with some of my clients is they don't have their story together, which is the reasons why you made the decisions that you made, and the reasons why you want to work for this organization, and the reason why you want to build a long-term career with them. So if an employer asks you, hey, you've been job hopping, how do I know you're going to stay with me? And you're like, that's not going to make them super confident.
Does
in
not
offering you
inspire
the role.
confidence at all.
That kind of
Exactly.
ties into a question from Andrea that Andy helped us highlight. So Andrea says, funny how the positive term rapid career progression is used when a person stays with the company versus the not so positive job hopper when a person manages their career progression in various companies. She wants to know your thoughts on that. And it sounds like basically it kind of just ties in with what we were saying about them wanting to mitigate risk and wanting to make sure that their bottom line isn't affected repeatedly by hiring people who might leave in 6 weeks or 6 months or what have you. Is that about right?
I believe so. Definitely. Definitely. I agree with everything that, you know, Andrea said. So, and the thing is, I try to remind people of this all the time. We are living in different times. Like if you look at when our parents and grandparents were working, it like they had the benefits, they had a pension, they had everything that they needed, everything, you know, to entice them to stay at an organization for a long time. And some of them also had good working environments too. You know what I mean? And the employers gave the employees a lot of loyalty. So those were different times. We're not in those anymore, unfortunately. So more people do have to move around. I mean, the starting wage is lower, and I don't think you can expect someone to stay at a specific wage for a long time and only get a 1 or 2% raise per year. sometimes you do have to move in order to make more, have better benefits. So I think employers need to keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of the work that we all three collectively are trying to do is about fighting stigma, unnecessary stigma that stems from, bygone decades in terms of how society and culture were structured and how work life and it was structured as well. And that loyalty that you just spoke of, it doesn't exist anymore. These companies ain't loyal. And so
Right.
why should we, be loyal to them as well? We're at will employees. They can fire you with no notice, but we still have this practice of giving 2 weeks notice. I understand it. I'm not telling anyone to burn bridges as you depart, leave well. However, if there are layoffs or rifts or, the money doesn't come through, you could be gone tomorrow. And that's how business works. And so we're trying to put the power back in your hands to proactively make those decisions to move on as you see fit. I just want to underscore what Chelsea was saying about the research needed. All three of us would agree that we really want you to take the time and effort and energy that's necessary to understand as much as you can about target employers so that you're ensuring to the best of your ability it's the right place for you to be going forward. A joke I always make is that people spend more time researching vacation spots than they do their next employer. And so if you think about your last vacation, how much time do you spend poring over, we're going to do this, this, and this. These are the best restaurants, the best hotel. This is, where I can have the best possible experience for my 1 week vacation. How much more, 52 weeks a year, 40, 60 hours a week, so on and so forth. So we just want to really plant that seed with all of you in terms of, doing that upfront work to make sure that you have the possibility of longevity wherever it is you land next. And going back to your points about sharing in the interview your plan to stay for a long time, selling yourself in an interview is very difficult for most job seekers and those who might feel they're carrying the baggage of being a job hopper, having an eclectic background. What tips can you offer to those who feel I'm not so good at selling myself? Chelsea, how do you help those type of job seekers get better in terms of their interview performance in front of a hiring manager?
I think the first thing that you need to sit down and think about is what is that insecurity and where is it coming from? Because when people come to me and they say, oh, I'm not really good at selling myself or I'm not good in a room. Okay, why? What's your concern? And the more that I chip away and talk to them, it's usually because of past trauma or someone stereotyping them or family and friends telling them, oh, you won't be able to perform, you won't be able to get this job if you continue to do this. So all of those thoughts are playing around and dancing in their mind. So by the time they get to the room, they can't perform because they're thinking about, what everyone has said to them and things that they've experienced, or the recruiter or hiring manager that shamed them for their career story. So the first thing that we really need to do is sit down and do a mindset shift and get in tune with who you are and what you have to offer. Often when I ask people, I say, what do you love about yourself? I always hear crickets. And it makes me sad because that should never be the response. You should be able to rattle off, I'm this, I'm that, I'm this, I'm that. I'm really good at this. So I want you to be able to answer, what do you love about yourself? What are you really good at? What are you a subject matter expert in? What do people come to you for? And what do you have to give to the world? And that right there builds up your self-esteem, your confidence. You give yourself some reassurance because there's power in knowing who you are and what you have to offer. And once you know that, you can easily change your mindset and it just shines through. Because when you're not confident, people know. They can feel it. Like they can tell as soon as you walk through that door, whether you're confident or not, because your body language shows it all. But once you know who you are and what you have to offer, it will make all the difference in the way that you present yourself in the interview room, in networking opportunities, meeting other people, and meeting strangers. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah, that's so true. I think that time and time again, when you speak to people feeling that they are unable to communicate their value, it's because they're not in touch with their own value. And maybe they've been in environments, as you shared, that have devalued them. So if you're in a toxic work environment, maybe you're made to feel less than capable or less capable than you actually are. And you carry that into the interview room as you go forward. And so that inner work is really important. We can't separate you being professional and you having, mental health or emotions. Those are all still part of you. And so it's important to try and align those as much as possible and do that inner work to figure out, what do I have to offer? What am I really good at? What makes me spark and come alive? And if you're able to latch onto those things and really own them, then in articulating them to the world, then it'll come across confidently, cohesively, and you will be able to make an impression because people believe you, because you believe yourself first.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think it also goes back to the research element of it, because it's working with career changers like I do, especially, it's just as much about understanding your value as it is understanding. And I guess value inherently means, like, what does it mean to that person you're offering it to? So you have to do the research on the company and the role to understand where that alignment kind of comes from. And I think that's a really important thing to just sort of be aware of, is the idea that, yes, it's about your value, but it's about the value that you bring to your target audience, the companies and jobs you're trying to apply to. And you have to do the research in order to know what's important to them, so that you can match up and align that.
100%.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Excellent. We have Tegan here. Hey, Tegan, good to see you. Tegan was our guest last month on Behind Hiring. She agrees with you, Nia, too. Bottom line, business is business. Companies are not loyal. And when you're in the job search, you are a business of one, period.
Yes.
I think that is excellent. Tegan also says Chelsea is awesome. So we've got some supporters of you here, Chelsea. That's excellent. All right, we've got another question for you here. In a recent post, you said, quote, "Our inner critic is sometimes our own worst enemy when it comes to breaking free from environments that are no longer serving us." How do you work with clients in a career change or other complex job search situation to quiet that inner critic and to gain or regain confidence in their skills and value?
The first thing I do with my clients is I listen. I listen to the way that they talk to themselves, because when you have an inner critic, it usually comes out in conversation. So typically when I talk to people, I hear a lot of, "Oh, I know that's not reasonable. And I know I can't do this. And maybe I'm overreacting, or, maybe I'm too sensitive." I get that all the time. People say, "I'm too sensitive." Okay, who told you that? And why are you now making that your story? And that's what I hear a lot of, because when you do work in those toxic work environments, people say inappropriate things to you all the time. People tell you you're overreacting, you are too sensitive. They talk about your work. It's a mess, right? And after hearing that for so long, I notice that people start to tell themselves that story, and they also start to believe it. And they also start to say things like "can't" and "not possible" or "I'm stuck." So I will let people go on, their rant and tell me their story. And after that, I'm always jotting down notes. And I'm like, "Do you know how many times you said "can't" and "not possible," or "you're overreacting" or "sensitive"? It's usually over 20 times. And I let them know, we need to start changing the narrative and the story that you're telling yourself. So I want you to promise me for the next 30 days, those words are out of your vocabulary. You can't say them. And if you catch yourself saying them, you're going to have to turn that around to the positive. You know what I mean? I can't. I can. Or "it is possible. I can do this. I am worthy enough. I do deserve this." And I notice, just by changing the way that you talk to yourself, it makes all the difference in the world. Because now you're feeding yourself that good energy, and again, building your confidence. And then you start to subconsciously actually act on the things that you truly want to do. That's what I found.
Man, Chelsea, that is so awesome. I love that you really dig into that sort of personal bit of who your clients are. That's something that I've only really felt comfortable doing in the last year and a half. For the first several years of having this business, I felt like that wasn't my business. I wasn't supposed to, dig into these people's personal lives. But the more that I worked with them, and the more I became more of a coach and started really delving in more, I realized that's at least half of the issues that most people are having. It's not, they definitely do have some misunderstandings or some, issues with like the best ways to go about job searching. But so much of it is that internal mindset work. And I love how you listen and then reflect back to them their own words so that they can, hear it from outside of their heads and from someone else's perspective. That's just beautiful. I love that.
I appreciate that. And, just for an example, that's me knowing what my strengths are. So when people come to me, they know that I'm blunt. And if you don't, I will tell you that. They also know that I'm friendly, but I'm not your friend. So I am going to hold you accountable, and I'm going to call you out on all your BS that you're telling me. Because so often, like, people want you to sugarcoat things and dance around the real issue. But the one thing that I tell people when they come to me, even when you read my profile, we are going to have an unfiltered conversation. And that's my strength. And that's what I lead with. And that's what I tell people, so that when people say, oh, you hurt my feelings, like, I don't feel terrible about it. I'm here to get you results. So that's the importance of knowing who you are and what you have to offer, and saying that up front so nobody's surprised.
For sure. Now, keeping it real is important in the work that we do. And I think that, in my practice, I call myself a holistic coach because I care about the personal, professional, and psychological. You can't divorce those three when you're going through the job search as a professional. You're still a person. You don't stop being a mom, a dad, a brother, a sister, a cousin, just because you're looking for a job. All those roles continue on and may impact what you're doing as you're being a job seeker, and may influence where and why you want to go certain places in your career. And so digging down into the psychology behind you saying that you can't present yourself well, that you're not worthy of having a high paying job, not worthy of a certain title, that's inner work. That has to do with things and experiences that happen to you. And it's important to be able to dig through those things, whether with a career coach like us, or again, there's therapy, there's psychologists. I had therapy on Tuesday and it was great. And so it's important to make that space for yourself to do this work in order to be your best self as you're out there presenting in front of a hiring manager, because you have taken the time to understand and debunk those myths you're telling yourself about yourself. And that inner work is so important. What Chelsea was sharing is basically cognitive behavioral therapy, that technique of actively noticing and challenging negative thoughts that you're having and replacing them with positive ones. It's CBT 101. And it's something that all of us have access to and all of us can do, just with a bit of attention and a bit of practice. And in that vein, about practice and trying to figure out our patterns and do that inner work, you mentioned earlier how some of your clients tend to fall into a pattern of ending up in one toxic environment after another. Yeah. And so given that a lot of your work is about empowering professionals to not do this and how to get out of toxic environments, how do you help your clients avoid falling once again into a toxic environment?
So there are a few different things. And I've found that people really struggle with saying out loud what it is they really want. Okay. So for an example, sometimes people will say, when I say, hey, well, what do you need from an organization? And they say, I need money. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, why'd you leave your last position? Oh, I didn't have a work-life balance there, and I was working 90 hours a week, and I wasn't able to do anything that I love, spend time with my family or friends. And I'm like, okay, so when I asked you what you needed, you said money. And they're like, oh, yeah, okay. So you don't just need money. Money is nice, but you also need a work-life balance. What else is it that you need? And people don't think about that. You know what I mean? And that is why it's so important to reflect on why you left each position, because you left it for a reason. If you loved it, you'd still be there. So understanding what those reasons are, if you need a higher salary, if you need work-life balance, if you need flexibility, a better PTO plan, if you want somewhere that has more opportunities for you to grow, you need to know that and be able to clearly define it and put together that list, because that is what will help you when it comes to researching these jobs and applying to these jobs, because you want to make sure that you're being intentional and applying to the organizations that are going to give you what you need. It's also helpful at the end of the conversation interviews when they say, do you have any questions for us? You need to ask those questions that reflect some of your core needs to make sure that they are offering it. So again, it's really getting in touch with what it is you need, so that you can understand, hey, this is what I need to be here to thrive.
Yeah, one of my favorite exercises that I give clients sometimes who are trying to figure out their next steps is I call it an ideal job and company description. And the idea behind is that you're writing out your own job description. What do you want? What do you want to see in your job? The key responsibilities, the challenges you love to solve. What do you want to avoid in your next job? There's an HR woman, leader that I worked with, and she did not want to be handling, payroll and some of those other, kind of more data-based, math-based role task in her job. She wanted to focus on strategy. So write that down and make sure that the pieces that you don't want are minimal in the job or not there at all, ideally. And so starting with that description, what kind of company environment do you want to work in? Write it down. So by committing pen to paper, you make these things more concrete and therefore able to go out there and pursue it because you have a base of operations that you created for yourself.
Absolutely. And I want to add to that too, and just build on it a little bit more. Another thing that I challenge clients to do is talk about their job search strategy. What have you done in the past? How have you gotten every job that you've got? Because when you talk to people, they usually use the same strategy over and over again. So for the people who are landing in the same type of environment, I say, okay, what did you do to get this job? Oh, well, I just applied on job boards and then, I just took whatever job called me and offered me the role. Okay, have you done that for every job? And they're like, yes. Or I'll talk to people and I'll say, how'd you get your job? And they'll be like, oh, well, a friend told me that I'd be a good fit, so I went ahead and applied. Or, my parents told me I'd be amazing at this, so I went ahead and applied. Or I got a referral. And then I start to ask them, okay, so who are you building your career for? You never really sought this out for yourself. It's not necessarily what you wanted to do. So those are two major things that I find that people often do as far as habits when it comes to the job search and why they continue to land in the same type of roles and environments.
So if I had to boil that down, I'm hearing that there's a lack of self-determination when it comes to taking on those opportunities. In one case, it's reactivity to, okay, job board, posting, applied, got the offer, I'm just going to take it. Or listening to outside voices, and of course our parents they help us get to where we are. They have valid voices, but it's not their career, it's your career and your life. And so you didn't self-determine in that area as well. So culture and a whole bunch of other factors can influence those type of things for sure. And I'm not dismissing them, but we want to empower you regardless of cultural background, regardless of being collectivist, you're super close to your parents and all of that. This is still your career at the end of the day. And so we just want to remind you that you're going to be working those 40, 50 hours a week, not your parents, not your grandma. And so it's important that, the choice that you made is really for you because you're going to live it every single day.
Yes.
Yep, absolutely. Tegan says, so many job hoppers leave a company focusing on one issue, but then get themselves kind of into that same situation. And that really underscores exactly what you were talking about, Chelsea. Tegan says, this advice is so good. We've actually got lots of people super excited about this conversation today. We've got, and I'm so sorry, it's not showing me what the name is on this, but saying, this is such a great conversation. I'm really glad I'm here for all of this good advice. That's fantastic. And even Sarah is chiming in saying, loved this episode. That is awesome. Thank you guys. If you guys are super enjoying this and you feel like anybody at all in your network might benefit from this, which I can almost guarantee at least somebody in your network will.
One person at least.
Yes, please go ahead and like this episode. And when we get to the end, you don't have to do it right now because It might take you away from the video, but share it with people in your network. Let other people in on this conversation. Our goal, I know mine, Niatu's, and Chelsea's as well, is just to empower job seekers and employees as much as we possibly can. And you can help us get more of a reach by sharing our videos. So please go ahead and do that for us. Oh, we've got another one. Thoroughly enjoying this conversation. Thanks, Manal. That is fantastic. Okay, we have just a few questions left for you. Four, I think, I guess. Let's see.
All right.
I've got one. You talk a lot, and we've talked a lot in this conversation already about advocating for yourself in the workplace. What does that actually look like? And what are some of the ways that job seekers and employees can start doing that, especially if maybe they never have before?
Yeah, so being transparent is number one. You want to be clear on what it is you want. Knowing what you want is actually number one, and then being transparent about it is number two. So having a good understanding of where you see yourself in the next 5, 10, 15 years, like what's the overall goal? And think about how this company is going to help you get there. So is it through professional development opportunities? Is it through being mentored by someone? Is it through shadowing someone else, or just being exposed to different projects? Like, get into an organization and see how they can help you kind of, reach your end goal. And that's not your employer's responsibility or your boss's responsibility. It is yours. So what you want to be able to do is go to them with opportunities that you found, or ideas that you have, or something that you know is going to help take your career to the next level, and have that transparent conversation and let them know, hey, you know that this is one of my goals, and you can put together, yearly goals or biannual goals, whatever it is. But reach out to your supervisor or someone you trust there and say, hey, how can we make this happen? I found this conference that I want to go to, or this certification that I want to get that would help me, move up to the next step. Will you stand behind this? So it's really being comfortable with approaching your supervisor, or whoever it is, with your goals and asking them for the opportunities. So many people are so scared of getting a no that they never put themselves out there. And you have to. Again, that's taking control of your career.
Yes. And I want to just underscore that last part you said about, so some people are so scared of getting a no that they never ask, they never put themselves out there. And I think it's important to just say, and I know this is kind of a common sort of saying at this point, but the answer is always no unless you ask. So if you're afraid of a no, asking is the only way you're going to potentially get something other than a no. So I think that's really important to just remember. It's always a no. You're never going to get what you want unless you're speaking up for yourself and you're asking for what you need and you're outlining what your goals are in life and in your career. I think that's really important.
Absolutely. And one of my favorite quotes, I have a lot, but one of my favorite ones is the one where they say, if you're uncomfortable, that means you're growing. So be intentional about putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. Say yes, even when you're not sure. Either way, you're going to learn and grow from it and be a better person. Don't be afraid to do that at work.
Nice. Kind of coming back to something we were talking about just a moment ago, Patricia wants to know, how does one avoid settling for that first offer of a job that they know maybe isn't really what they want?
So that is when you have your list of non-negotiables, your values, and what you want in a job. And it's also your mindset. And again, it's that story that you tell yourself. Oftentimes people will tell themselves, this is all I can get. I'll never have another opportunity, or I might not get another job offer anytime soon. And when you talk to yourself like that, you are going to settle and take the first thing. So reframe the way that you talk to yourself, and then you'll know once you get that job offer that's not a good fit, you can confidently say, this is not a good fit for me for these reasons, but I know that another job offer will come along very soon. And you'll subconsciously start doing the work to get that next job offer.
Excellent. And what would you say if it were because my sort of thinking as you were talking about that was to say, well, maybe you have the opportunity to come back to that job and say, if there's just a few things that don't quite fit, you might be able to come back and say, well, hey, I'm flattered for the offer. What I'm really looking for is these 2 additional things. Is there any wiggle room? Is there any way you can meet me on those things? What do you think about a tactic like that, Chelsea?
So I love that tactic, but I think you also have to check in with your feelings, right? So if someone says, yes, we can meet that, are you excited or are you like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll take it? And if it's that, oh, okay, I guess I'll take it, it's probably not a good fit. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I feel like, and I see it a lot of people will talk themselves into situations that in their gut, they know that they're not comfortable with. They'll say, oh, well, I can do it. Like the people were pretty nice and they agreed to give me free parking or they agreed to give me 5,000 extra dollars. But then when you talk to them, or when I talk to them, I'm always like, are you happy? Like, can we put some excitement in your voice? And if they can't bring themselves to do it, I'm like, okay, what does that mean? What is that telling you right there? And they're often like, yeah, I know. It's just not good. But I think that's an awesome tactic if you do want the job and if it would be a good fit for you.
Nice. Cool. I love that. Checking in with yourself. That's awesome.
Yeah, we're gonna keep on harping on that because you're the expert on you. I think all of us would agree as coaches that I don't believe that I have all the answers. I'm here to help you find your answers that are within you because no one knows you better than you do. I'm just along for the ride when we meet. And I have skills in terms of asking great questions, reflecting things back to you, helping you explore, make connections. That's my skill set. That's what I love to do. But it's not my job to tell you what to do. You have those answers and we're here to help you unlock them at the end of the day. So yeah, just want to put in that plug and we have to get to our last few questions. So we've had a lot of emphasis in this conversation, rightly so, on empowering the job seeker. That's our goal in all of this. But we also have hiring managers and employers who might be tuning in, or people will be in those roles, one day. If you were speaking to a room full of hiring managers, what would you say to help them adopt a more inclusive attitude, similar to Sarah and Matthew on this call today, to have a more inclusive mindset when it comes to dealing with candidates with a career path that might look eclectic or might look like they're a hopper by whatever definition they claim a job hopper is. Long story short, how can we help them push past the stigma and the assumptions that are, foisted upon individuals who are job hoppers and help them deal with these individuals more thoughtfully in the hiring process?
Yeah, so I mean, there's so much work that needs to be done here. I think that all hiring managers and recruiters really need to go through continuous trainings on unconscious bias, implicit bias, all of that, because these are narratives that they've made up in their head based on experience that they've had. But they also need to recognize that this story doesn't fit every person that you encounter with this background. So just because one person came in and they left and had that hopping background, that doesn't mean that the next person is going to do that. I also think that hiring managers also need to realize, hey, you have the company's best interests at heart, not necessarily yours. So you're operating on the benefit of the company, not what you think or what you feel, you know what I mean, or what stereotypes that you subscribe to. So I think continuous training needs to be surrounded by that. And I also think that more people need to be trained on how to interview and what the goals are with interviewing. Because I can't tell you how many interviews I've been in and my clients have been in that have just kind of gone off the rails and been, really inappropriate. And it's due to a lack of training. People just assume that anyone can do an interview and they throw people in the room, whoever is available. I've worked at companies like that before. Like, oh, are you available? Do you have a block of time? Can you come in and interview? And that might not be that person's strength. But if that's your strategy for your company and you need to pull in people, everyone needs to be trained on how to properly interview and respectfully interview people as well.
Yeah, and that's really great feedback. Not generalizing your one negative experience that every single person might fall into that category. That's stereotyping. And we all know we wouldn't want it to be done to us. And so let's try and disrupt that pattern and not do the same thing to others when it comes to your hiring process. I love your call for training. We all can benefit from expanding our skill set and getting more in touch with the thing I'll never forget in my master's program. I trained to be a therapist, was how much time was spent with us digging through our own attitudes, biases, stereotypes and preconceptions. And the point was so that I, as a, fully minted therapist, once I graduated, would not bring my own stuff into the room when dealing with someone sitting across from me. So I'd be aware of my stuff and when it would be activated. And so I could mitigate that and deal with the person, be in their story, in their world. And so if interviewing training can get more into that vein of helping us to surface that stuff that we bring, we all have it, and making us aware of it and finding ways in the process to remove opportunities for that stuff to come in, then we're all going to be better off. Companies will have a better interviewing process. Candidates will be treated more fairly and feel more included in the process. And everybody wins. They feel, even if you don't get the job, you might feel like, oh, they treated me really well. No big deal. Let me move on. So there's so much to gain if training and removal of bias and stereotypes were to take place in an intentional and proactive way.
I totally agree with that. And that's something that, you talk about doing that when you were in school for psychology. That is something that in the last few years has come up a lot in coaching training as well. So training coaches how to coach better is to start recognizing your biases and taking a step back and separating that sort of internal bias based on whatever experiences you've had from the reality of that one particular situation. So the fact that, you went through that in school, the fact that coaching programs have a component of that, I think that is a really good sign and just kind of says that, like, yes, we can do that for recruiters and hiring managers as well. We should be advocating for more of that kind of training and removal of biases and things like that. I love that you mentioned that.
Awesome. So we're going to get into our last two questions for you, Chelsea, and then we're going to let you go.
Okay.
So these are standard questions we ask to everyone. So number one, if you could wake up tomorrow and the one thing you feel is really broken in the hiring process was fixed, what might that be?
Ooh, I would say transparency. It is the biggest one. And I say that because I've met so many people and I've been through it myself with employers not really being honest about the company or the job. They're giving you that textbook answer and that overview just to get you there. You know what I mean? Because employers do spot, like good professionals. And they're like, I want them here and I'll say anything to get them here. But at the end of the day, like, it's a lose-lose situation because you're messing with someone else's life, you know what I mean? And they come in and they leave, which also affects your bottom line too. So I think transparency up front, understanding what type of environment that you foster and what you can offer as an employer, and making sure that that job description is correct. You know what I mean? And being able to give a truthful overview of what it really is. Because what I found is that job descriptions say what they do, but then when the employee gets there, it's every other duty not listed. You know what I mean? So, transparency, number one.
That's a great one.
I can't tell you how many clients I've worked with who have said, well, okay, here's my job title and here's the job description, but I also do these 27 other things. So I think that is something that hopefully companies will start to realize more and start to have that transparency. It's really, really important. All right, final question for you, Chelsea. If you could reveal one insider secret to job seekers that would help them get hired more quickly, what would that be?
You know what? I think we touched on it a lot earlier, and that's just confidence, knowing who you are. Like, people know when you walk in a room and you're confident, people feel that. And it also puts hiring managers at ease because when you're confident in what you do, you're not sending off any red flags or alarms. Like, it puts them at ease and they're like, okay, I can trust you. So change the way you talk to yourself, work on your confidence level, and it'll make all the difference in your job search process.
That's dope.
I love that. We've got Patricia. Sorry, Nia, too. I think we've got a little bit of internet issues. I apologize. Patricia says some of the best hires I've made are some of those odd or different people. They bring a refreshing perspective and new talents to an otherwise mundane working environment. Culture fit is still important, but leveraging diversity in a positive way is an exceptional tool. Wow, Patricia, really well said.
Yeah.
Yes, I love that.
All right. Those are all the questions we have for you today, Chelsea. Where can people find you? Where should they follow you? How do they get in touch with you?
Yes, you can find me right here on LinkedIn, Chelsea J. Again, I'm the owner of Season and Growing, so you can go on my website, seasonandgrowing.com, or you can send me an email at chelsea@seasonandgrowing.com.
That is awesome. We will also put up some of her information in our end screen. Thank you to everyone for being here. We absolutely enjoyed all of your engagement and your excellent questions. If you have any other questions for Chelsea, feel free to reach out to her. Andy has some links here in the chat. Otherwise, Niatu, did you have anything else before we get out of here?
Yeah, sure. Pay attention to your inner voice. Pay attention to what it's saying to you, and do those check-ins with yourself. A lot of the advice that we have shared today really comes back to that inner work. I'm going to plug again. Don't be afraid to seek out therapy if that's something that could benefit you. Therapy is open and available to everyone. There shouldn't be stigma attached to it. I will proudly say I have a therapist. I meet with him right now bi-weekly. And it helps me show up better in what I do for my family and for my clients. And that can help you show up better in your job search and for your family and whatever else it is you do as well. Because one of the things that Chelsea shared earlier is if you are dissatisfied, it's going to leak out somehow. I learned the term emotional leakage from my grad school professors, and we all have it. We all leak if we're not doing so hot. You know, we can only mask things but so well. And so if you're able to do the inner work to get yourself into a good mind state, it's going to have wonderful ramifications across many aspects of your life. So take care of yourself. It's important.
Love that. Love that. Chelsea, any closing remarks?
You know what? I just want to thank you both for the great conversation today and having me on. And just a reminder to everyone watching, you have the power to build your career for you and go after everything you want. You can do it, and don't let anyone else tell you otherwise.
So empowering. I love that. So many of you in the comments said how much you enjoyed this conversation. So remember to please share this with your network. Tag Chelsea, tag Niatu, and myself. We would be happy to comment and engage on your posts. And we just love the idea of being able to reach as many people with these messages of empowerment as we possibly can. So Chelsea, thank you so much. This was wonderful. You just gave so much value to our audience. And to everyone, I hope you have a great day. Niatu and Chelsea, I hope you do as well. And we're going to go ahead and say bye. I'll put up our contact information in the end screen, but otherwise, everybody have a great rest of your week. Bye.